Hi, Jelly. Welcome to the Cosmic Heartist podcast. I am so excited to have you here. We've been trying to plan this for a while. I know that even before we had our, well, maybe, yeah, even before we had our first conversation, full conversation, because I feel like nowadays it's so common to have a back and forth conversation through Instagram voice notes that we feel
Mm,
like we've had a full conversation without having a full like Zoom conversation. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
anyway, after all those voice notes, I was like, I really want to talk to her more. And I'm so glad that we're finally getting to do this. To start,
Yeah.
I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about, or a lot about your favorite things in the world. And yeah, just what makes you happy, what you enjoy doing, and where you're at currently.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm excited to be here too. Thanks for having me. So glad we got to meet in person and have conversations in real life too. Um, it's so funny when you asked me the question, the first thing that came to mind was like, ugh, I don't like talking about myself, but not even because I don't like myself, because I actually really enjoy myself. But like one of my favorite things to do is actually like get to know other people and like get to know about things and like learn about things and like just explore, adventure, create and stuff like that. So I'm like, that was just an interesting thought to witness. But yeah, I am Jelly. I am a multifaceted, multidimensional being. I have lots of interests. A lot of them revolve around like wellness and like spirituality, I would say, for the most part. I am married, and I feel like a lot of my life revolves around like my marriage and my husband. I never thought that I would be married. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but yeah, that was like never anything on my mind. I was just like, marriages don't work, people get divorced. I come from like a divorced family, and so I was just like, all of my friends' families are divorced, all of my it's like divorce, 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 divorce. Like marriage doesn't work. Like I'm never gonna, that's not gonna be me.
Yeah.
And so I think now that I've had the opportunity to be in a like healthy, loving, beautiful relationship and like actually have like faith that it might work and be like forever, it's like, oh, I'm gonna cherish it. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Is that
Yeah, yeah.
enough?
That's a good place to start. That's so interesting actually that you said that you never thought that you would get married. I didn't know that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So what changed your mind, Nate, and the person that he is?
Yeah, literally. It's interesting. So I think even though I said that, there's like two parts, right? Like I think like the wounded me and like the hurt me and like the traumatized me was like, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna be, I'm not gonna be married. And then there was like this like higher self me that like probably knew that's what I wanted, but didn't want to admit it because I remember there was a conversation that I had with a mentor of mine when I was in my financial planning career, and he just walked me through this exercise where he's just like, if your life was a movie, like tell me like best case scenario what like the rest of your life would look like, and like in that scenario, I remember being like, I'd meet a guy, we'd be in similar fields, we'd eventually get a dog, we'd eventually get married, and he'd like retire me and I'd be a stay-at-home mom and we'd live like happily ever after type of thing. And that was literally the only time I've ever said that because to like friends and other people, I'd always be like, no, they don't work. um, but in my heart, I think I was always a hopeless romantic. So I think like that part of me was always there, like kind of yearning, but not really wanting to admit it. And then Nate came around. I also like went to therapy because I was in a bunch of really toxic relationships and unhealthy relationships prior. And I think just like through healing and then also like being in relationship with Nate and also not only Nate, but like his family too. And like he comes from a really great family of just like love and wholesomeness. And I think, yeah, just everything kind of was like, oh, maybe I can try. And that's all I can really do, is like try and do my best. So yeah,
I love that. And you've been married how many years now?
we have been married. It'll be our fourth year this year.
Mm. I love that. So we're like on parallels with our marriage journey. And I was telling you that something that I want to talk about is wife life because I feel like
Mhm.
we're both pretty deep in our married lives and we're very big presences in our husband's life, but also I feel like it's so, and they're big presences in our lives as well. And I feel like it's so important to um, find that line where we still have our individuality and we're still growing individually while also growing in our partnership.
Mm.
And also, I mean, Virginia Woolf wrote this book called A Room of One's Own. And I don't know why that's what's coming into my mind right now. And I feel like as a woman, whether you're married, have a family, are a parent, I mean, I'm not a parent, so this is just from my perspective, but a woman, I feel like, always needs a room of her own to
Mm.
explore herself, to know herself, to remember her creativity, her magic. So, what are some ways that you kind of find that room of your own in your marriage or in your
Mhm.
relationship?
Yeah, I love that. It's funny because I'm thinking, like, literally, yes, I think every woman should have a room of her own in her house, whether she's married or not, because, yeah, just having your own space, I think, is really, really important. That's just like your little sanctuary, whether that's a room or like a corner of your house or a backyard or like something. Um, but for me specifically, I think I'm like very blessed to where I have a lot of more free time than like your average person because Nate is willing to like work on his business and grow his business and let me help him with it and like me kind of just figure out what I want to do on the side, which leaves me a lot more time. And so I've just been like exploring the things that I might like, if that makes sense. Like I'm just like, oh, like when I originally quit my financial planning career and stepped into this, I went back to school for holistic health because I was dealing with like my own health problems. And it was like right in the beginning, excuse me, of COVID. And it was like doctors weren't really helping. So trying to figure out what I could do. So I was just like, oh, well, I'll just learn about it myself and try to do things to help myself and kind of trial and error and be like my own doctor in a sense. So started doing that. And then I've just been following my curiosities, like, along the way, like, after that, I kinda, like, helped heal the things that were going on with me, and I got really passionate about, like, wellness and just living holistically and, like, talking about that, and then people were naturally asking me questions, and then technically, like, the certification that I got was for coaching, so then I ended up coaching some people, and then from that, it was just like, now I'm like in this coaching world and like, what other things can I get from this coaching world? And I did like a laughter certification and I did like, or a laughter yoga certification. And then I did like an embodiment certification, which is where I met you at. And just, I did like a yoga certification last year and I've just been like following my heart and like interests of like, what else might I be interested in and just allowing my curiosity to guide me, I guess.
I love that so much because I feel like our whole lives we're taught we need to do one thing and we need to stick to one thing. And I find that I'm very much the type of person that when I am in a world, I kind of want to get all into that world. So, how you were saying, like you were in the coaching world, and then you were like, okay, what can I get from this world and how can I go deeper into it? And I think it's actually such an interesting way to go about life because it's very experimental. We've never been taught that it's okay. Yet here we are, like showing our inner selves, our inner little selves, like, hey, we can do it. You know, we can learn everything, we can do everything. And I feel like, I feel like that's really amazing. And at the same time, it also maybe feeds um, this whole epidemic of our attention being really short. Just because we're able to dip really deeply into whatever we want to dip into. Um, but also, I wanna ask you, when you feel like there are all these options or there are so many different ways to go, or when you have all of these skills, at the end of the day, how do you feel like you can just tie them all together? Or is there something that you feel like, um, is there some way
Mm.
that you feel like everything that you've done throughout the process can come together into something?
Well, one thing I wanted to just like piggyback off something you said earlier about like showing our little selves too, like, hey, we can do it, because that struck a thought in my head where, like, yes, it is curiosity, but it's also been part of that too, like trying to nurture my inner child of like, what are the things that I loved doing when I was younger that I stopped doing over the years because life happened or somebody said something that kind of discouraged me or whatever. And so, like, dancing, for example, like I got back into dancing. Embodiment is like a lot of dancing and moving and stuff. And like, even most recently, like I started jump roping and like double dutching when I have enough people. And like, it's the best thing ever. And like, my little girl is so happy. And so I think it's like, yeah, also going back to the roots of like, what did you want to do when you were younger? Like, what did you enjoy doing? And I think that's really important too for helping you figure out what are the things that you can just be curious about trying.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
brought up embodiment and you said that that's where we met. And I want to tell a little story about how our embodiment coaching course had a lot of people in there. I can't even remember, maybe 100 people.
Mhm.
I have
Yeah.
no idea, but a lot of people, and we would have these Zoom calls, and it was like 2 a.m. Philippine time, and I would
Oh
sometimes
my
stay
gosh,
up
the
to
real
be on
one.
those calls because the energy of live calls is just so damn different from the energy of
100%.
replay calls, and especially when there's like live coaching, right? You're live coaching each other on the live call. How the heck do you miss that? Anyway,
Mm.
so I would see you and I would be like, oh my God, she looks so cool. I want to be her friend. And I know I told you this, but I think it's just such an interesting story to tell the world that I was like, I want to be her friend. But then we never really got grouped together for anything. And then I think eventually there was like a session that we all did, like a practice session that we all did together. And I saw you there. And I think from there, I followed you on Instagram. And then eventually, now here we are, like 2 years, a year and a half later. But I think it's so cool that our hearts always know. It's like
Mhm.
there will always be those people that call out to us in like a screen of squares. And it's like she, like her. I want to know
Mhm.
her. And I think
Oh,
it's so cool that we now know each other and we've met in real life.
yeah.
Jelly is part Filipina and she came to the Philippines and we got to literally hug in real life and it's so cool. But yeah, speaking of little selves, I think our little selves also choose. Our little selves are like, her, I want to be her friend.
Mm.
And also speaking about little selves, I think it would be cool to go into embodiment a little bit and talk about what embodiment is because I feel like for a while and maybe currently as well it has been a buzzword as well
Mhm.
as somatic. I think somatic is a big buzzword right now. So I want to talk to you about embodiment and what that means because we did this embodiment coaching course together. And for everyone listening, what that entailed was meeting our inner child, meeting our inner teen, and meeting our highest self. And what was it? The triple E method, emote, embody, express, where we share how we feel and then we embody that feeling. So if it's something angry, we're literally like yelling into a pillow or jumping up and down or punching a pillow. And if it's something happy, maybe we're like dancing. Um, and then we express and kind of just digest and process what kind of just went on. So embodiment coaching, what do you think about it? How do you feel like it has helped you a year and a half later? And why do you think it's so important for everybody to do some sort of embodiment coaching in their lives or not even coaching, but we can
Mhm.
all coach ourselves. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I think it's so important to coach ourselves, but go on.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah. Ah, great question. Um, so I'll tell you 2 sides, like the personal and why I think everyone should too. Like for me personally, it just helps in the way of like exactly what you said. You're like identifying the emotion, you're like feeling it, you're processing it, and then you're like, what does this thing have to teach me? And like, how can I learn from it? And like, how can I move it? Because emotions get stored in our body, right? And a lot of times we don't take the time to actually feel it. We'll just like feel it and we'll like shove it down and we're like, "Mm," especially if it's like something that's like uncomfortable, right? And so for me, I think the embodiment certification that we took in the coaching just helped give me tools to like navigate life a little easier. Like when you're like talking about hitting the pillows and stuff, I was like, oh my God, I love a good rage ritual. Like that is my jam. I was laughing the other day because we were watching this movie. I forget what it was called, but it was on Netflix, and I will let you know if you're interested later. But we were watching this movie, and it was like Jamie Foxx and his wife, and they're like ex-CIA agents, and now they have kids, and like there's like the scene where the kids are on one side of the room and like they're in the bedroom and it kind of sounds like they're having sex, but like it goes to them and like they're actually like the wife is like punching the pillow while he's like holding it up and stuff. And I was like laughing because I'm like, oh my God, that's us. Because sometimes, like now that Nate knows, because obviously I share with him like things that I'm learning and stuff too. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm just feeling frustrated or whatever, and he's like, you want to go hit some pillows or like something, and he like also has the tools that can help remind me sometimes of like, yeah, actually, I probably should go do that thing. Um, and I think it's just helped me get to know and understand like myself more and like my emotions, and to be able to communicate them to others because like how can you really communicate something with someone else if you're not even conscious of them, right? And so I think it's helped with my communication with others as well, of just being mindful of like what I am feeling so then I can communicate so then they can help support me in a better way if I'm able to like identify what that thing is. Um so yeah, it's been really helpful. And I think for everyone else, it's just so powerful, especially coaching. Like honestly, I would love to get a group of us like together to do like group coaching with each other or something again because I just it's just great. Like I'm sure you've experienced it too, but like it's just amazing and so crazy at the same time to see like how just sitting with an emotion and like being with it and helping like understand it and feel it and move it can just shift energy. Like I've had a few sessions with people that were literally like, what just happened? Either like tears and they haven't cried forever, or like energy flowing through their body and they feel lighter than ever, or like this feeling they've had ever since like third grade, just like falling off and now they're able to be like more confident and stuff. And it's just like crazy work that sounds super woo-woo, I'm sure, for someone who does not know this. But
Yeah.
it's like to actually like go through it and witness it and hold space for someone is just like so cool and so crazy at the same time.
Mm. I love that because I like to think that before anything, I am a skeptic. And it's funny to say because I feel like I don't portray myself as that way. But like for astrology, also, like in the beginning, I was a skeptic, which is how I'm able to explain it the way I am because I have been a skeptic. So for embodiment coaching as well, I was a bit of a skeptic and I was like, what do you mean I can feel stuff in my body and get them out of there? And if it does sound woo woo, and if you are listening and you're like, how does that even work? So, every coach will do it in a different way. If you do it for yourself, honestly, I said you can do it for yourself, but I think it's much harder because it's so much easier when you are held space for. Then you don't
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I have to lead myself. Oh, I have to ask myself how this part is feeling and how this part is
'Cause
feeling
you're playing
because
2 roles if you're doing it yourself, You're like
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So like for people listening, what it entails, at least for me, when I do an embodiment, I'll ask you as well how you do yours. And then if anyone wants to do some embodiment coaching, come hit us up because we're happy to help.
Yeah.
Um, so the way I do it is actually before I talk about that, you said all of a sudden someone can get rid of something that they've had since third grade. That's me. You picked up on me. I the first the first poem I think in my poetry book, which is coming out very soon, is called
Yay.
Piece by Piece, and it's about me removing piece by piece of an armor that I put on when I was in the third grade. Because when I
Mm.
was in the third grade, I got kidnapped. I have never said this
What?
on this podcast, but
I
yeah,
did
so
not know
that
that.
happened, and so I had a lot of like protection up on me, and so through an embodiment coaching call, a practice call with one of the girls from the course, I was able to remove these pieces that I put on so long ago, like this really heavy steel armor, and I was in the
Mm.
third grade. And I was holding that since then until I finally realized it, what, a year and a half ago, wow, that's so long of holding energy in my body that could have been removed sooner had I had the tools, right?
Mm.
So one example, personal example of how embodiment is so cool because I was like, huh, what am I even gonna feel? And then I
Mm.
just surrendered and went into it and I saw something so clear, coming from someone that's usually like, oh, I can't really visualize, you know?
Mm. Oh my god, you can't
So
just drop that in there and not out, but I understand we're on the podcast, so I'll ask later. That's wild.
yeah, it was a pretty defining experience in my life in a lot of ways, and it's crazy because it was orchestrated by um the family driver, so someone that we actually had a lot of trust in, which I guess is what happens a lot of times when it comes to like kidnappings and robberies and whatever. There is a lot of inside jobs, which is really trippy because it's like, then who can you trust? Who can you trust really?
Mm.
Um, so that's that. That's a story for another day, and I will tell you about it. Um, but the way I do embodiment coaching is I lead someone through a body, or I would lead you through a body scan first, with meditation music, because I feel like that just allows us to drop in so much deeper. And if you're like, what is a body scan? That sounds woo woo. That is not woo woo at all. You close your eyes and you just feel the energy that's coursing through the different parts of your body.
I'm
And
sure it
when
probably
you,
is different too, depending, like, who you're talking to.
yeah, it's always different. But then eventually it's about asking, okay, which part of your body feels a little bit heavy or like it's holding on to something? And then we give it a texture, a shape, a feeling. And then we work on taking it off, and then we express. So for in my expression, sometimes it's writing a letter, sometimes it's creating art, sometimes it's dancing, sometimes it's hitting a pillow, but whatever it is, I like to call it like a self-love ritual, because it's always self-love in some form or the other.
Mm.
And it's like reunion with yourself, and then but before we do that, we meet a version of ourselves. I forgot about that part. We meet
Mm.
either our inner child, our inner teen, or our highest selves. And every time I have led someone through an embodiment coaching exercise, which is maybe 5 or 6 times now, there is always tears. There is
Mm.
always like, whether it's highest self or inner child, and whether it's happy or whether it's sad, there is always tears, and it's always a cathartic experience. And I'm like, is it me? Like, am I a cry magnet, or does this happen with everybody? I don't know. But if you're looking to move some tears, I'm your girl. And Jelly, how about you? How do you do your how
Oh
do
my
you
goodness.
do your embodiment
That's
coaching?
hilarious because same girl. I thought the same thing. I'm like, I didn't I like crying magnet. I would just be like, I don't know, do I just hold this space where people just feel like they can release? I don't know. Is this everybody all the time? Cause yeah, even like for guys too. Like I've had a handful of like male clients and they always surprise me with like the tears and like I haven't cried in like years, and it's like, yeah, you need to release sometimes,
Mm,
Um, so for me, it's similar in process, a little different, just because I tend to mix mine in with like my holistic life coaching, and so I tend to know a little bit about what's going on in their lives, or like we've had sessions or whatever, and so I don't always utilize it. It's just more so like if it seems necessary. But usually in most of my coaching calls, we'll start with like just like a meditation to ground in so that we're like on the same wavelength as one another. We're like here present in the moment and we're like forgetting about the things that are not, especially if they come in with more like frantic energy or just like higher energy, it's like, okay, let's relax into it and like, yeah. And then kind of just talking about like life. Usually what happens is there's like something that comes up, whether it's an emotion or a situation. But through talking about it, there's usually an emotion that arises. And then it's like, do you feel like, what do I ask? I don't know exactly what I ask, but just basically like, noticing that emotion and wondering like, let's be curious about it, and then like having them close their eyes, feel into their body, have them focus on their breath for a little bit, and then identify like that emotion, like where does it live in your body? And then from there, same thing, what color is it? What shape is it? Does it want to move? Stuff like that. Like I had one person as she was talking about this like anxiety that she was carrying, you could see like even in her body, like it looked like it wanted to move, so it's like, does anxiety want to move, and it's just like, so she like got up and was like moving and stuff, and it's like, yeah. And then eventually it kind of like evolved into something else after we're like doing the movement, like do we want to check in on it, like does it look the same, has it changed any? And usually it's changed a little bit. In some other processes that I've had with people, it will eventually be like, oh, like does this emotion remind you, or is it like attached to another moment in time, whether that's like your inner teen or your inner child, like, is there a core memory associated with that? And then usually there is, and usually around like third grade or something like that, how you said, and just having like a dialogue with their inner teen or inner child. And sometimes I'll bring in like the highest self too to like help kind of bring it all together. It's kind of just depends person by person, depending on what the particular situation is. But yeah. Um, and then also having them do some sort of mm, I don't know, I guess like processing or like understanding of like the emotions and what just happened or how they can move forward, stuff like that, whether it's like a journaling or if it is dancing because like it just needs to move and get out. It could even be like a conversation with the emotion of like, what was this thing here to serve, or like what was it trying to protect, or like whatever type of thing. And then like it could be a conversation of like thinking it and realizing why it was there and stuff like that. And so yeah, I kind of just depends each individual and, like, the situation, but that's, in general, kind of how it goes.
I feel like a lot of people are talking about inner child healing, right? I feel like a lot of people have gotten on that train, which I feel like is amazing that we're
Mm.
all coming back to our inner child and coming back to realizing who we were before all the conditioning, before all the beliefs, before all the thoughts. Like I sit here with a picture of little me on my desk every
Mm.
day, and I'm like, if she's not like, if I'm not smiling like that, I don't want it at all. And I feel like we all need practices like that where we come back to little versions of us and we're like, hey, are you okay? Is there
Mm.
something that you want to do that we're not doing today? Or I think it's also so powerful to like write letters to younger versions of us being like, hey, guess where you are now? Like
Mm.
these are
Or the tears might
tools.
come with that one, but yeah.
I mean, these are tools that sound so simple. They sound so easy, but then you do them and you get waterworks. You get feelings like you've never felt before of belonging and of love just because we're showing ourselves that we love ourselves. I think, ugh, God, the magic in that, right? But I want to ask you, like, what do you think is the importance of talking about and healing our inner teen, because now that everyone is on with the inner child, I think we can finally bring the inner teen back online and kind of
Mm.
have those conversations. um because I mean, don't wouldn't you say that for everybody, like our teenage years are always really tough. Like they're always experimental. We have no idea what we're doing. We look really odd. We just hit puberty. We think we're the shit, and then sometimes we think we are absolute shit. So it's just such a roller coaster when you're a teen, and I feel like there are parts of teenage us that just never are seen ever, 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 ever until we take the time to be like, oh, this is
Mm.
coming from like 15-year-old me that blah, 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 blah. So,
Mhm.
what do you feel like the importance is of communing with
Mm.
our inner teen, and what are some practices that you feel like we can cultivate to do that?
Mm. Oh my god, I love this because truthfully, out of like my highest self, my inner child, and my inner teen still gives me a struggle here and there. I'm not gonna lie. So this is great. Um, but I love it because honestly, a lot. obviously traumas happen at every can happen at every stage, but I do feel like because we are so experimental and because we do feel like we're the shit or we might feel like we're shit and like everything that you said, like I feel like our teens can come with a lot of trauma because we get ourselves into trouble sometimes. We do things we're not supposed to be doing. We're like rebellious, all of those things. And so I think being able to like just communicate with our inner teen and show them love. I mean, I'm also speaking from experience too, because I understand everyone has their own experience with their inner teen, but like my inner teen particularly was super rebellious, super like, I don't give a fuck what you say, Sorry, I don't know if we cuss on your podcast, but you're good. Um, yeah, just got myself into some trouble. And that was something that I just recently had to come to terms with. Like literally I had this realization maybe in November where I just had like a download one day where I was like, I actually think I created a lot of my suffering, if not all of my suffering, And like that's a hard pill to swallow because when you're growing up and when you are, yeah, just like growing up and growing, and you have parents who are supposed to quote unquote take care of you and stuff. You have all these expectations of what they should be doing or how they should be acting or how you want to be loved. And you're not realizing like the projections that you're putting onto them or like the unfair expectations you put on them or whatever. And so, yeah, I just had this realization where I was like, yeah, I actually went through like some pretty traumatic things. And that was like really nobody's fault. Like, yes, it's not like I was responsible for everything. But also like I got myself into some trouble, And so being able to like actually realize that and like hold space for myself and like actually swallow that pill of like, what if I did? And like maybe I'm not actually responsible for everything, but what if I just did take that responsibility and how empowering is that to be like, yeah, I did. But if I created my own suffering, then I can also be responsible for creating like even more beauty in my life and creating like the opposite of suffering and like thriving essentially, right? And so I kind of realized that in November, and I had talked it over with my therapist, and she kind of defended me in a sense of like which is great, like you're still valid for feeling X, Y, and Z for like mom or dad or whatever. And I was just like kind of talking myself out of it, and then maybe in January I was reevaluating again and was just like, no, like I think I'm okay to take on this hat of like I created my own suffering because I had like unrealistic expectations and I did things I wasn't supposed to and like I'm just taking responsibility for it. And the weight that like lifted from especially a relationship with like my mom and I and me being able to like communicate those things with her and like tell her like I'm sorry and that I love her and like I understand that she was just doing the best that she could. And it's like something that I've always known my mom was doing the best that she could, just like my mom and my dad. But like to actually feel it in your body is completely different than knowing, right? And so I think I only found that through doing inner work, whether that was with my inner child or my inner teen or even just like who I am today. Um, and yeah, that came honestly a little bit more through just like diving into the spirituality world and like realizing like what if things didn't happen to me, they happened for me, and realizing like everything, literally like my traumas that I've had up until now, like all were for a purpose, And like I wouldn't be who I was today if it wasn't for them. And if I didn't have the parents that I had, if I didn't have the sexual traumas or like all of the things, And it's like, wow, that's actually kind of empowering to think about. Um, so yeah, I think I kind of went off topic a little bit, but to bring it back to the
Wait, wait,
inner,
I wanna say something about that though,
yeah.
before we go back into the inner teen. First, I think that is such a powerful realization. I think we all get to that at some point or the other, unless we don't. That we realize that all of our suffering is our own. It really is. We are creating it all for ourselves through our ego. Um, and the minute we accept that, and the minute we drop that, and the minute we just stop accepting, like I feel what you're saying. It just lifts. Like we become so much less dense because it becomes so much less about this person's supposed to do this for me and this person's supposed to do this. It just, you take your life back into your own hands and then you feel responsible. And when things are shit, you know it's because I did this that things feel shit. And when things are freaking amazing, you know that it's because I did this that things are freaking amazing.
Mm,
And like that is radical authenticity. Like
mm,
accepting that everything in our lives is because of something that we've chosen, whether it's suffering or love or magic or creativity or whatever it is. Okay, another thing I want to ask you before I completely forget, because we know that I'm prone to just losing my thoughts. Um, so I've never gone to therapy, but I find it very interesting that you have gone to therapy and you've also done embodiment coaching and embodiment exercises. And my question for you is what is the difference? Or like what do you feel like um therapy does and what does embodiment do differently? Or
mm.
just anything that you want to say about this topic of like going to therapy and working with a coach and the differences and the similarities and what you get from it.
Oh my god, girl, I have done all of the things. Like, that's why I take, like, such pride in, like, I've created this life because it's like I got to a point in my life where I was, like, suffering, depressed, thought, like, totally victim mindset, everything, boohoo me. And then it was, like, to a point where it's just like, "Are you gonna fucking do something about it?" Like, I think you can do something about it. And also, I think life can actually be a lot better, and it's just like, how? I don't know how, but I'm gonna figure out how. And so, like, let me just do things to figure out how. And so I started with like podcasts because I couldn't afford therapy at the time or anything. And it was like podcasts are free. I'll start with podcasts. This is like in 2015 or something or 16. And so it was like the beginning of podcasts. So I was listening to those and then reading books and then eventually made enough and like made time for therapy. And yeah, I've done all of the things. I've had life coaches, I've had embodiment coaches, I have done women's circles, like all of the stuff, just like looking to try to heal. And I think for me, for therapy, the main difference is like therapy helps you process things that have happened in the past. And I think they have their place. And I don't know that I think therapy has changed a lot too, though, because I've had like really great therapists and I've had some therapists that I felt like we're just talking about things and it's not really helping, if that makes sense. And so I do think therapy depends a lot about like who your practitioner is and like how you vibe with them, what their tools are that they use and help you with. But yeah, I think therapy tends to like look at the past a lot. And I think like embodiment coaching or just like life coaching and coaching in general, well, actually, that's different too. So, like life coaching, I think helps you look forward. Like, what do we want for our future? How do we move forward? And I think embodiment coaching helps you with like present day. And like, yes, some stuff can be associated with the past, or we can be thinking about the future, but it's all like present. Like, what is here with us today? And like, how are we dealing with those things today? Which is actually pretty cool if you think about it, because all we really have is the present moment, right? Um, so, yeah.
I love that description. Thank you. I think that's so fascinating that I mean, and when you think about the words as well, right? Embodiment coaching. You're being coached like something that's been tripping me up a lot lately because I think I have decided that coach like I love coaching. I think it's so much fun. And I think there's so much that we can incorporate into coaching. Like my plan is to have my coaching based on a few things. For me, my background research would be like astrology and
Mm,
would be like sending them energy through the Healy and like searching auras through the Healy. And also like for expression, like diving into poetry. So like just embodiment coaching, but bringing in literally everything that I've learned along the process.
mm,
And I'm struggling to put that into words because I feel like embodiment coaching is fairly new and not a lot of people like know what that means, especially when you're like, I'm an embodiment coach. They're like, what is an embodiment coach? So I think it's so cool that we're having this conversation. And also just the words of being an embodiment coach. It's like you're embodied, like you're in your body. And
mm,
I don't think it's about coaching anyone to be anything that they're not. But what
Mm,
it is it's just like like opening the door back to our heart. It's like, here, come back in. You're welcome. Where have you been?
mm,
Um, and I think that's magic. That's so cool. So thank you for describing it that way. We're gonna go back to inner teen tools. Okay, so super important to talk to our inner teens. Most of the time, as you shared, you've also been through a lot with your inner teen, and that's often the side of us that's like, okay, you're giving the little kid in you so much attention, but what about me again? You're leaving me out again. You know how there's that middle child syndrome? The inner teen kind of sounds like the middle child being like, hey, why aren't you minding me?
mm.
So what are some tools that you think that people can use to come talk to their inner teen? Or what are some tools that you have used that have been like exceptional for you?
Mhm. My favorite way to, like, channel my inner teen, because I actually really love my inner teen, like, yes, we got into some trouble, but, like, she was great, and she was confident, she didn't give a fuck, and she's like, "Okay, come on." So one of my favorite things to do, which is super simple, is, like, I have a playlist of, like, all the songs that I used to jam to when I was a teen and I used to rage to and stuff, and I was just, like, put that on to tap into her, whether because music holds, like, such a frequency, especially, I think, music at that age, like, in our teens, I feel like emotions are so high, like you said, we just got to puberty, right? So our emotions and our hormones are everywhere, and, like, I feel like back then, everything was just so intense, you know? Like, the highs were so high, the lows were so low because we're just, like, filling into all of our emotions, and I think that mixed with, like, at least for me, music has always been, like, a big part of my life to where, like, if I'm sad, I'm listening to sad music, if I'm happy, I'm listening to happy music, you know? And so having a playlist that holds those emotions of, like, such extremes when I was a teen is just so cool to, like, go back to and, like, tap into, and it's just so cool to even, like, you haven't heard the song in 10 years and you still know all the lyrics, like, that's crazy, you know? And it's just, like, one simple way you can tap into her. Um, I aside from that, I personally really benefit from just, like, journaling and, like, prompts and, like, having conversations. So you can even have a conversation with your teen, you know, if you wanted to, write a letter, like you mentioned, even you can do that for your inner child or your inner teen. Looking at, like, pictures even to see,
Yep.
like, yeah, like, what was my teen doing? Oh, shit, I forgot about that, or, like, wow, you know, see what memories come up and then, like, journal, reflect, do poetry, do things around that. What else? Those are the main things that are coming up for me. What about you? Is there anything you
You
wanna
know,
add to?
it's so funny is the Gen Z selfie.
Mhm.
Um, so I have I might actually have it in here. And since I'm also sharing this on YouTube, it'd be so cool to show you if I have it. Oh my God. Okay. So I have my, I always used to have a digital camera. And this is my last digital camera that I had. Um, I don't remember where it's from, but Gen Z selfie, we were the OGs. I used to do this all the time. All
No,
the
yeah, literally.
time.
That's
Um,
so smart you kept it. I would just throw things away. I should have kept things.
I keep everything to a fault. I have a Taurus moon, which also I forgot to ask you earlier. Please tell us your big three.
I am a Scorpio sun, a Leo rising, and an Aries moon.
Love. I
Mm.
love that. Venus just moved into Aries, so this is going to feel like a good time for you. Venus is a planet of worthiness and values and relationships and beauty. And
Mm.
moving into Aries, like Aries is the sign of the self. So it's really all about, cultivating our relationship with ourself, which is also perfect that we're talking about this right now. And then I feel like
Literally.
another thing is, like you said, like writing letters. So I attend poetry class with Chelsea Diane, who I talk about a lot on this podcast. She leads Poems and Power, and our next woman that we're learning about is Taylor Swift. So our prompts for this last week has been Taylor Swift prompts, Taylor
Mhm.
Swift prompts. And I would not consider myself a Swiftie, though back in
Mhm.
the day, I used to listen to Taylor Swift on
Me
MTV. And
too.
so, like,
Yeah.
Teardrops on My Guitar era, and like You Belong With Me and Love Story.
Yeah.
And 15, that album was that the album 15 or was it just the song? I don't know, but 15 was a song and I was 15 as I would listen to 15 and she sings when you're 15 and somebody tells you they love you, you're going to believe them.
Mm,
And so I had that in my mind yesterday and I wrote a letter to my 15-year-old self and I went pages and pages and pages and um, it's so cathartic. I think if you haven't done it, you definitely need to find a version of like your teenage self and write a letter to that version of you. And also, I love your note about looking at photos because for me personally, I mean, I love my teenage me, but I have a lot of judgment towards her as well. I think a
mm,
lot of times we have or maybe I'm just talking about myself, but I think a lot of times we have more judgment about how our teenage self looks versus our little self. Like
mm.
oftentimes for our little selves, it's like, oh my God, you're so cute. And then our teenage self, it's like, what is she
Ah.
wearing?
Oh my god, yeah, we were hurt, yeah.
So I think it would be so interesting to look at these photos and it sounds a little crazy, but talk to them. Like talk to yourself and be like, "Hey, I love you. Like you're totally rocking that jacket. I would never wear it right now, but you're totally rocking it." Cuz after I wrote myself the letter, I went I have all of these Facebook albums, which by the way, I need to download the photos and delete them, but I have all
Good
of
for
these
you.
Facebook albums from all the way back and I found a photo of me wearing a jacket that's like brown and it has like so many guitars on it, so many different kinds of pink guitars, and it's just filled with guitars. And I always wanted to learn to play the guitar, and I kind of learned, but not perfectly. So I just music, right? What you were talking about music. And I was just looking at her and I was like, girl, you thought you were so cool. I love you, you know?
We literally thought we were so grown. It's so crazy because my nephew he's 13, and I look at him and I'm like I go back to how I was thinking in my brain at 13, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, he's not thinking. Is he thinking that way? Like,
No,
what?" Like, he
no.
might be though, because we what? It's just so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
In your teens, think you think you grown, you think it's
I mean, I have nieces that are 7, and the way one of them talks, like, she knows in her heart that she's a 20-year-old. So, I don't know what to tell you about age these days because teenagers today, I feel like their minds are already like 20-year-old minds, and 20-year-old minds are like 30-year-old minds, and, I mean, it is the natural progression of life, right? As the world becomes more advanced, the souls that are born into planet Earth are also more, I feel like, younger and able to deal with a lot of these advances more.
Mm,
And maybe they usher us into it, which is why these babies are just so damn smart.
mm,
So, we've been talking about our inner child and we've been talking about our inner teen. And we said that in embodiment coaching, we also talk or we also access our highest self.
mm,
What is what is the highest self to you? Because to me, I like to think of it as the most heartful self rather than the highest self. I feel like highest self gives us this sense of like being high and disembodied, which
mm,
like just like overlooking, high as
mm,
in overlooking. Um, Whereas most heartful self or most authentic self, I feel like that's the truest true. And I
mm.
feel like that's what we're really accessing. But how do you look at the highest self? And how do you feel like you access or some tools to work with your highest self?
Mm, yeah, I love that you say your most heartfelt self. I've never thought of it as like being higher and disconnected from, but I guess I've always just seen it as like being a couple steps ahead of you and like helping you on your way type of thing. And like this being that just like knows the things that you think you don't know, but it's like you actually do know. We just need to access it. And also, because like I said, I tie it in with like life coaching too, right? Like if you have goals around it, it's like it's the person and the being that like already knows how to get you there in a sense, right? And so we're accessing just like the tools or like the advice or whatever the words that need to come through. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, that answers how you see the highest self, which also makes sense, right? I mean, that they're just higher and they've seen things. And I think a lot of the verbiage around it is. higher self. And I think it's also important to define it for ourselves.
Mm,
Like, what is higher self or what is it to us? Because we live in a world where so many words are being thrown around, and it's so easy to just grab on to trendy words. And then we end up realizing, that trendy word is not in resonance with my body.
mm,
So I feel like something I always bring up also on this podcast is I think it's really important for each of us to redefine the words that we're using, especially on a daily basis, because
mm,
yeah, I mean, it's it's the story of our lives. Like, it's the script to the movie of our lives. Those are
mm,
our thoughts and those are our words. And if we're not aware of the script of this 100-year play at most, like, then what are we even doing? Stepping into main character energy as I say that. Okay, so my
mm.
next question was, what are some tools that you feel you and more people can use to access your higher self, your truest true, your most embodied you?
Mm. I'm realizing I use music a lot, but I really enjoy having like a playlist
Mm.
to put on that I can like move, groove, dance, stretch, whatever to, and like that helps me get into just like a better, higher state.
Yeah,
Um, and helps me access those things because I feel like just how we're talking about with embodiment, right? Like our bodies and like our physiology plays a big role in like how we're feeling and the way that we're thinking, whether we think it is or not. Like we all know if you're like slouched over, kind of drooped down, like you're probably not going to feel the best. That probably means you're feeling a little insecure, unconfident, tired, whatever, right? But like if I'm standing like really straight up and like chest up and head held high, it's like, oh, I'm feeling more energetic, I'm feeling more confident, like whatever, right? And so I think in that same way, like using your body to and music that has positive messages or that might resonate with like your higher or your more most heartfelt self and like just spending some time in there, it can really help you just like be in that state. And then from that state, again, I like journaling a lot. And so you can journal. You can journal whether you have like a specific question for yourself or a specific thing that you're trying to figure out. As I'm saying that, I'm also realizing like I'm a big nature girly. And so, like, part of me, I feel like accessing my highest self too is like getting in nature and like sometimes just getting out of like my head and like just allowing myself to be. And like oftentimes thoughts and downloads and things come from just doing that. Um, yeah.
I think we've talked about journaling a bit on this episode, but I want to bring some light onto journaling because I think there are many different types of journaling. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to journal and I used to complain. Like, I used to be like, oh my God, I
Mhm.
had a fight with my brother again. Oh my God, my dad yelled at me again. Like, God, why do they always have to get mad at me? That was my journaling when I was like seventh grade, or random dreams that I would have. And
Mm,
then I went to study in the States, and then it was more like about the adventures that I was having and places that I was going and things that I was seeing. And then fast forward to like 2019, that's when I started going way deeper with journaling about like life concepts, journaling about, deeper thoughts. And then I've come deeper inward now, and I'm realizing that I'm back kind of journaling about my day. But I think it's so important to, instead of journal about our, no, sorry, I've been journaling about my yesterday. So, dear self, this is how yesterday went, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's so important, and something I've incorporated as well is, instead of journaling about how yesterday went, journaling about how I want today to go.
mm,
Like, today I'm going to do this, because once it's written, like, it's that much more likely to happen. And so I think there are so many ways to journal, and there's nothing wrong with any kind. But I also feel like what we journal is what we're reinforcing. And so
mm,
if we're journaling about yesterday, we're kind of just reinforcing yesterday's energy. If we're journaling about being mad, we're just kind of reinforcing being mad. But instead, when we're journaling, looking at the future, like, okay, we had this fight, now what? That gives such a different perspective of, we had this fight and this is what he said and this is what I said and this is what he said and this is how it went. Right?
Mhm.
Just the texture of that,
Yeah.
like putting that on paper, I think feels so different.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you too is just like it's more like the focus, right? It's like what are you choosing to focus on? Because like
Yeah.
journaling, at least for me, I've found it kind of just amplifies whatever it is that you're focusing on. So if you are
Yeah.
waking up in the morning and saying this is how today is going to go, like you're setting that intention and like so it
Yeah.
is. And maybe it's not going to go exactly to what it is, but it's like it's already out there. It's going.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting there complaining, focusing on the things that went wrong and everything that could go wrong, it's like things are probably gonna go wrong, or
Mhm.
like I do think that there is a space though, because I do really enjoy utilizing journaling when I am in like a tiff or something. It's like just
Yes.
giving your space to write out and like if you need to like it's better to say things to your journal, like the things that you maybe might want to say, but it's like you don't actually want to say the things to the person because it will actually hurt them. So it's like,
Yeah.
sure, say those things to your journal, get it out, and figure out how do I move forward from this? What are the solutions? How am I going to better communicate this in a like heartfelt way that is not going to hurt them? Or like, what do I actually need from this? Like, and then being more productive. So I think it can be both. It doesn't have to be like one or the other, exactly what you're saying. There's no right or wrong way, but I do think journaling and just something about like putting pen to paper is like very powerful, especially
Mhm.
when you are setting intentions. And that leads me to about the tools for like highest self. Something else as you were talking that came to my mind was even like doing meditations, like to access your higher self. Like
Yeah.
that's been so powerful for like me and clients and just like like you often have the answers. It's just about accessing the things and like you can do that through meditation and journaling and just being intentional with like how you're guiding your thoughts and your energy.
Mhm. And I feel like such a good tip for when we can't get ourselves to meditate is get someone to hold space for you. They're
Mhm.
like then you're guaranteed you don't have a choice. You don't
Yeah,
have a choice
it's
at
so
that
much
point.
easier. Yeah. That's what I was
And
gonna say. I think it's a lot more powerful when specifically for your higher self, like sure for some other things, maybe you can do on your own, but I think specifically for like your higher self, it's helpful to have somebody guiding you there
yeah.
because we tend to get in our head a lot.
Yes, yes. And I think it's really powerful to visualize and become aware of what your highest self is wearing and smells like and all these things. Because that way, or your truest self, because that way we can start incorporating that. Like you come out of that meditation, you can start like smelling like that. You can start dressing like that. And then your mind kind of registers, oh, wait, I already am that me. And that's where the power lies, right? Realizing that actually we are already that version of us. All it takes is that little shift to notice, put the spotlight on that version, and then that version comes through. Isn't it so cool? Life is just such a trip. It's we're all on a stage and the spotlight just shines on different versions of us at different times of our lives. And
Mhm.
sometimes, yes, we do have this 31-year-old body, but then the spotlight is shining on 18-year-old me. And can I have that awareness to be like, okay, I woke up 31. I woke up on February 5, 2025, but somehow my body is feeling the feelings of August 10, 2003. You know
Mhm.
that? Wow. Like wow.
Yeah.
That is that is that is embodiment. Like that is it. Like being so in tune, knowing that okay, I woke up as me, but today I'm not feeling like this version of me because there's something coming up from the past and I have the tools. So I'm going to sit with that version of me from the past instead of shoving that back down and going through my day. And then, as Sahara Rose likes to mention, it's like what does she say? It's
Mhm.
like a kettle that's boiling. And if you keep on shoving it down, eventually the top just flips off and water starts spewing everywhere. Versus if we allow that little bit every day or every so often, then you don't have this explosion of water because you're aware of what's going on inside you. And that way you're not projecting it out.
Mhm.
And isn't that the biggest problem in the world? Just like
Mhm.
humans, like, and not to say that we're above this and we don't do this, but just humans
Yeah.
projecting things on other people, humans projecting thing on planet Earth, humans just projecting. And when
Mhm.
we're more aware, we project less. And when we project less, we're happier and the people that we're around are happier as well because they don't have to carry density when they're around us. They feel light and they want to be around us.
Yeah. And I think it's not even we're projecting less. I think we're just projecting differently, right? It's like
Mm,
we're actually still projecting light instead of
yeah.
darkness, but like the light feels a lot better than to project the darkness. And I think if we can
Yes.
remember that actually I just got that downloaded as you were saying it. I was like, actually, we're still projecting, but it's just a
Yeah.
matter of like what are we focusing on? And yeah, I think it's super important to be able to identify like the different parts of yourselves and to be able to call on them when you need them for different parts and to be able to like sit them out on the bench when they're like not needed for certain things because there's
Yeah.
different parts in all of our lives, whether it's being a wife, whether it's being a business owner, whether it's being a student, whether it's being whatever, right? A podcast host. And it's like there's different parts of us that show up better for all of those different roles. So if we can just utilize them in a way to where we want them instead of just allowing them to like take over and take the mic, right? Or take the spotlight and like, no, actually you show up best here and like we really enjoy you in this position. So like, your time to shine, you're in light.
Ah,
Yeah, I think that's that's the goal, right? And exactly what you said, it's not like you or I are like perfect in these arenas by any mean. It's just a matter of like being conscious of it and doing the work and staying committed to continuing doing the work.
I love the way you just explained that. Of there are different versions of us that are good at different things because I feel like a lot of times when people are in the spiritual community, there is a big thought of like, okay, let's go channel your spirit guides and let's talk to guardian angels and let's, channel some energies. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of those. I think they all have their space and they're all so magical. But what if, just what if, when we're feeling a little bit lost, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go get a channeled reading from my guardian angels, we sat and said, okay, which version of me can deal with this?
Mhm.
Because how well resourced are we actually? We are so well. We've been through years. If only we start giving more credit to those years. I mean, not in a snooty way and not like I've been here for years, so I know so much, but in a way that it's like I've been through so much. And so there is a version of me that's also been through that. And I don't need to look outside of myself for help to get through something that I've already been through. All I need to do is like silence everything. Like
Yeah.
silence is such a gift that is so rare in
Mhm.
2025.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I remember being at a coffee shop. We were friends with like the owner. This was a few years ago. And he knew I did coaching and he was like, I forget exactly how the conversation went, but he just essentially was asking, like, how, like, being that you're a coach, how do you know what you should be doing when there's so much information out there? And I was like, well, you have to like turn down the volume on all of the other information because in the end of the day, all that really matters is like what's best for you. And like, really, you know it. It's just you have all this other noise around you. And so you think it might be this thing or you think it might be that thing because this person, it was the right thing for them? But if you can actually like tune out the noise and tune into like what is it that I need, like that's where all the magic happens. Because yes, there are people that we can model after, and yes, there are people that if they're living the life that we want or they're embodying the things that we want, absolutely, like those are pieces that you can like follow after. But there's going to be some things that like only and are only going to work for you and might only make sense to you, because it's like sometimes we don't know things, especially I think at being women, like some things don't make sense always logically, but like we just know. And I love that you brought up the part too of like the different parts of us have the answers, or just like reflecting back what I was saying too, because I also have done a bunch of like Tony Robbins work, and I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he's like the goat of like life coaching. He's like 65 now and he's been coaching for like 48 years and he's done a bunch of science, and like Harvard did a study on people who like go to his events, and like it's like stuff that like therapy and like drugs can't even like replicate because he's just like knows the science of like how to break through to people and like help with them with changes. And anyways, one of the things that he utilizes is pretty much embodiment, if you think about it, but he calls on like your lover, your warrior, your sovereign, and your magician. Like that's how he labels them. And he's like, we all have these four archetypes within us. And like each one of them holds different information, and each one of them is going to respond to situations differently, but like they all know how to help you. And it's just utilizing which one of them in the right situations. And like it's all within you. So just reflecting back what you were saying.
I love that. Um, that makes me want to tie in wellness because I feel like you are a wellness girly. The way you show up on Instagram, I freaking love it. I love the content that you're sharing. I am so impressed that you make your own broth. I cannot imagine myself doing that. And
It's so
it's
easy. You can totally do it.
yeah, but I just can't imagine myself touching chicken feet. But
I use
I'm
tongs.
just
I use tongs.
I'm just so inspired, and I admire the way that you take care of your health, and the way that you cook, and the way that you work out, and the way that you show up. So, where does this all stem from for you? Like, I know you said that you had an illness come up that you had to deal with, and you had to be your own doctor. And is that where it started? And how has the process shifted and changed throughout the years for you?
Yeah. Oh, so many thoughts in my head as you asked that. Yeah, I think that's where it started was like so just to give like more detail, I had like eczema that like came up and like I had it for a while, but then during COVID, I started also getting like yeast infections and then I had this like weird, it wasn't eczema, it was like a rash at this point, like on my leg, and it was just like weird skin stuff popping up. And I was like, I don't think this is eczema. Like, sure, you can tell me it's eczema, but like I'm just not believing it. I'm not subscribing to that belief. Like I actually think that so maybe there's a reason why I'm having this stuff come up, you know? And it was like literally right when COVID hit. So like you couldn't see a doctor in person unless it was like life threatening. And so I had like a bunch of like telehealth calls, and they would just basically look at it and be like, yep, that's eczema. I'm going to prescribe you whatever they prescribe. I forget what it's called, but and I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I feel like there's other answers. And like, I did try different topicals because it was fucking itchy and I didn't want to feel it. But I was like, there has to be other answers. And so there was a girl, I don't remember the exact situation, but I know for sure there was a girl that I went to high school with, and she was doing holistic health coaching and she was posting about it. And I was interested because I'm like, what is this? I didn't know much about it. Just to give other background, like I come from, as I'm sure a lot of us, we don't come from like the best, like healthy eating backgrounds. Like I grew up on like cup of noodles and hot Cheetos and microwavable meals and like, stuff like that. And so that's just to give background. And so then talking to this coach, she just opened my eyes to like food can be affecting your body, and it's like such a simple thought, but I had never thought about it before like that, and it's like, oh, so then she put me on this like elimination diet. I forget exactly. I had to like stop eating like dairy and gluten and some other stuff. And just basically throughout working with her, I was like intrigued and like interested, like, oh, like actually, when you've never learned something, but you hear something and you're like intuitively like, I know that that's true type of thing. Like it was one of those things where it was just like, she didn't even have to necessarily prove things to me because it was like, well, yeah, it makes sense that the things that I'm putting into my body would affect my body. Like it just makes sense. Um, and so, yeah, I kind of just went down this rabbit hole of like listening to health podcasts, diving down, like following people on Instagram who were talking about health at the time, and working with her, trying to figure out like alternative medicines and stuff. And basically, I was able to heal the eczema, like it completely went away. I haven't had any eczema since, which is crazy because it's like people think this is just a thing. But then I also, because I went to school for this, I throughout school had learned about other things like candida overgrowth being one of them, which is like a fungal overgrowth within your body, which can also be causing like rashes and other types of symptoms. And I was like, actually, that kind of sounds like what I might be having too, because I was also having like breakouts and other symptoms. And then I learned about like your gut. And I know gut is like a buzzword now and everybody knows about it now, but back then it wasn't as big. And so I was learning about like your gut and your microbiome and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I just got really obsessed with like learning how different foods would affect me and like being my own kind of like researcher because even though people say certain foods are like healthy, it's like, yes, in general, whole foods are healthy, right? And like greens and stuff, but it's like everybody's body because our biodiversity is so different. Like what is healthy for me or makes me feel good, even though it's healthy, might not be the same for you, right? So it's like also a game of like research of like, okay, when I eat this thing, gotta pay attention to my body. How does it feel? Am I more bloated? Am I more gassy? Am I, all of those things. And so yeah, I just basically did that for like 4 years. It was like my health journey of like trying to heal and um my face is clear now. My gut is like pretty much healed. In between all that, I also did end up finding like a naturopathic doctor, and they basically just more so help on like a holistic side. They do recommend like supplements and stuff, but they're more like natural supplements. They do testing to try to see like if you have any like food allergies, or they did confirm that I had candida overgrowth. So that was kind of cool to know like, oh, my thought and my assumption was right. Um, and yeah, so I just went down like this rabbit hole of just health and holistic stuff. And eventually, unfortunately, that naturopathic daughter I felt like wasn't, and like I felt like she was kind of more pushing the things that she wanted to versus like helping me with the things that I wanted to. So I stopped working with her. But she was really great in the beginning and taught me a lot. And then I eventually found like a lifestyle coach, or a lifestyle doctor, which was like still a doctor, but they helped you fix your illnesses or like heal basically through like movement, diet, exercise, meditation, relaxation, stuff like that. So that was really cool too. I learned a bunch of stuff from him too. And eventually got to like the root of like what was happening with me and was like, okay, this is really cool to like after 4 years. And yeah, so then I just went down this rabbit hole and like I think just absorbing all of the information made me feel honestly a little like angry. Like, why is the world so like prescriptive? And like also I don't blame people, but it's like we go because this is the system that was created and we think one time at the doctor for like 10 minutes is gonna fix us. And like, it's like, actually, that's not even close to enough time to figure out like what is going on because our bodies are just way more complex than that. Like we literally have like a whole universe inside of us, like trillions of cells, and they all are working so beautifully for us every day. And they're always trying to find equilibrium and like homeostasis and like trying to help us heal, right? And like if we could only give them the nutrients and like the love and care that they need, like they have our back. And like I think that was the one thing that I loved throughout this is like just finding a deeper appreciation for my body and just developing a relationship with it because I feel like it was almost non-existent, especially when it came to like food before. I didn't really think about what I was eating. And so yeah, that kind of led me down to talking about it on Instagram because I was like frustrated with things, but also excited about what I was learning. So then I just like share what I was learning in school or what I was learning about my body and my journey and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's just kind of become like a little passion of mine that I feel like I want to pass on to my kids because one of the things that we learn in school too is like the same way generational trauma passes on is like you can also pass on like generational healing, right? And so, like, that's been a big motivator behind my continuing like upkeeping everything with my health because it's like okay, yeah, now I'm healed, but like just because I'm healed today doesn't mean I can eat like shit. So like just doing the maintenance. And then my working out is a completely different story that I can run you through quickly ish. I originally started working out maybe like 10 years ago because it was like reasons has totally changed. But back then I was like, I mean, I'm still pretty skinny. If you see me, I'm like thin. But back then I was even skinnier. I didn't have any muscle on me. And so like I would get teased a lot growing up, being like too thin or too skinny. One time, oh my God, it's so funny, but it's so not. One time I had like a boyfriend break up with me because he said he missed ass. And I was like, what? It's like the most absurd things, right? But it's like these little things that like eventually over time was like, okay, I have to do something about my body. So I was like, this was like when Instagram like was really like when like the fitness people were like big on Instagram and I was like, oh, like I can build a booty by going to the gym. Let me go to the gym then. So I started going to the gym because I wanted to gain a bigger booty. And then that whole journey has just evolved over time because it's like I no longer go to the gym for that reason. Now I go because I actually enjoy it and it makes me feel good and I like the way that I feel being like active. And if I am lazy for like a few weeks, I'm like, actually, this doesn't feel good to me, and I want to like show love to my body. So it's kind of the same thing. Like throughout the process, I've just developed a better relationship and more appreciation for my body, and like feeling like the least that I can do for all that it does without me even having to think about it is like show up and like give it the things that it needs.
So everything that you said makes me think about like what are our relationships with feelings? Because I was thinking about how, okay, it's so cool that you're able to be so consistent with working out. And then I wanted to ask you what keeps you consistent. But then you said that when you don't go for a few weeks, then you feel like, okay, this doesn't feel good. So you go again because you like to feel good. And also with food, like noting what things make you feel bloated or gassy and then not having that food again. And I like how you said, just because I'm healed now doesn't mean like I'm completely healed forever. You got to keep working on healing. And you're teaching me a lot of lessons right now because I, 3 years ago, learned very different things about my tummy, became somehow developed lactose intolerance, had to become really particular about what I put into my stomach. And I also did what you did. I worked with a nutritionist. I did an elimination diet for a month. I was really good for a month, but after that, I kind of fell off the wagon. And I had go through spurts where sometimes I'm really sweet to my body and sometimes I just need food and so I'll eat whatever is there and if it's a pizza and I know that I can't stomach a pizza, I'll still eat a pizza and I'll feel like shit. And what's interesting to me and just now as we're talking, I'm realizing it's because I've become so comfortable feeling shit. Like my relationship with the feeling of my tummy feeling like shit is comfortable, which is
Mm,
why I'm going back to that feeling rather than my relationship with my tummy being completely normal
mm,
is comfortable, which is what should be the case. But what's
mm,
comfortable for me is the complete opposite, which definitely shows me that something is out of balance and something needs to be fixed, right? But
mm,
how interesting is it that our relationships with our feelings can be motivators for so many different things with our lives. Actually, it's everything, right? Because even Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about what's the feeling? What's the feeling that you're going for? Until you know the feeling, you're not going to get it. If you're logicalizing it, you're not going to get it.
That's so crazy that you brought him up because I was listening to him yesterday, and as you were talking, that's what I was thinking about, where he talks about like we can be addicted. I was thinking less about like physical and like your tummy, but more so like thoughts, right? Like we can be
Mm,
addicted to like negative thoughts or like bad situations because that's just what we're used to. And whether we're
mm.
thinking about it and we think we like it or not, like that negativity releases chemicals and our bodies get addicted to those chemicals just like they get addicted to drugs.
There you go. Yeah. And we don't even know it, but our bodies are addicted to it. Which is
Mhm,
why we're like, for example, my mind knows I shouldn't touch that damn pizza.
mhm,
But my tummy is hungry and I want the pizza.
mhm,
So I feel like it's usually when we're working on our primitive on our primitive instinctual sides that we just go for whatever is there. But when we're embodied, right? Again, embodied, when we're fully in there, like not only is our mind like turned on, light switched on, but it's also like our whole body is also on and we're here and we're like happy to be here. Then I think
mhm,
everything just shifts. The relationship between everything just shifts.
mhm.
Um, Gosh, light bulb. So many light bulb moments.
Mm.
Um,
I
okay,
do
we've
wanna
gone.
say though, just
Yeah,
to put it out there, like, 1, I wanna honor you because, like, that's a big realization, and it's also, like, very vulnerable and, like, brave for you to even, like, admit what you just did, you know? And at the same time, like, I don't wanna put it out there that, like, I have my health friend of mine 24/7 and, like, I don't also eat a pizza here and there, you know? Because it's like, I do, like, we're not perfect, and I don't think it's about being perfect, I think it's just about, like, constantly striving to do a little bit better than what we have, you know? Because yeah, just like my fitness journey, girl, my fitness journey was like this, and it took me a long time to be consistent. Like sometime, like I'd be really consistent for like 4 months, and then I'd be like down for 2 months, and I'd be really consistent for 5, you know? And it's like it's been this kind of like the stock market, right? It's like overall trajectory up, but, like, in between has had a lot of, like, dips as well, and it's just a matter of, like, over time, is that trajectory going up still? And if it is, great. And even if it's not, we can always turn it around to still do so.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I've definitely been there. It's definitely been on and off and up and down. But I will tell you something. Something that I did improve in is yes, we did have a pizza, but I also baked some chicken with potatoes. And I also had Navs get a salad. So instead of
Love that.
just having only a pizza, which I know would have completely turned my system upside down, I had a pizza with roasted potatoes and chicken and salad. So I made it a full meal rather than just pizzaing it up and then my tummy being like, "What the heck are you doing, lady? You know that I don't like it." So I
Yeah.
think you're right. Thank you for pointing that out, that we're never really perfect, but we also have to honor us for the moments that we are looking at for ourselves, because more often than not, we are looking out for ourselves. We're just looking at the part that we aren't.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, I love this, Jelly. I know you're about to say something, so I'll let you say it first.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's great that you added all of the other things with pizza because that's like a little hack. Like I think people tend to think like, what do I need to eat? What should I eat? This and that, you know, but it's just like diversity is like one of the keys to nutrition is like you need different types of nutrients throughout the week. So like having a bunch of different things is a great start. And like even having a salad and if you can have that salad with like a vinegar based dressing before you have anything else, that helps like line your gut, which can help with digesting everything else. It lines your gut with fiber to help digest everything else, and, like, the vinegar helps with, like, enzymes and stuff like that, so just a little hack
Hmm,
I want to add in there,
I
and
love
also
it.
give
I'm
you your
gonna
flowers for implementing other things. Yeah.
thank you for my flowers. I'm gonna talk to you more about that because there was a whole stage where for a whole year I had a salad for lunch every day, but a good filled salad with protein and fiber and carbs and whatever. And now I can't stomach salad anymore. I don't know if it's because I overdid it or what. So you saying like line it with salad with vinegar, I feel like my tummy would just be like, I don't like
It
that.
doesn't
So
have to be like a big salad, it could just be like a small one.
a few bites.
Yeah. Or if you wanted, like, some potatoes, not potatoes, roasted veggies or something, that could be
Yeah,
good too.
just some kind of fiber.
Yeah, some kinds of greens, veggies,
Mm,
and
mm.
yeah.
I love it. So for anyone listening that wants to get inspired, go follow Jelly on Instagram and look at her posts and it will make you want to eat colorful and eat clean and make your plates just so beautiful. Okay, last little topic that I want to touch on before we close is
Mhm.
wife life and keeping our individuality even when we're so present in our partners' lives and our partners are so present in our lives. And um, I don't even know how I want to talk about this, but I see similarities between the way you and Nate are and the way Navs and I are. And I feel like we saw it when we were together in person as well. And I want to talk about how, oh, maybe what I want to talk about is how beautiful it is to have, supportive partnerships.
Mm,
Because a lot of times we hear about, I guess, men that aren't stepping up and men that are not thinking the way they're meant to be thinking and men that are just falling behind. And I think it's so cool and so powerful to have examples in our lives of men that are holding it together and
mm,
being our ground. And, we've both talked about how we have so many different interests and there are so many different things that we want to do. And I know in the beginning you said, um, Nate has set up his business in a way that you're also able to explore and see what's fun for you and what you want to, um, yeah, what you want to make as your work and your career. And Navs has done the same for me. And I think it's just so powerful to have wholesome partnerships where we're able to show up vulnerably, but
Mm.
we're also able to show up knowing that we are full-fledged individuals rather than individuals that are only completed with these people beside us, which I think is also a journey and a learning.
Mm.
Um, anyway, passing it on to you. Anything you want to share about that?
I was like, was there a question there? But I think we're just talking about it. Um, yeah, honestly, I think I don't know, at the beginning of our relationship, I used to think because of the way that we spent time together, I was codependent and I like let that be just not healthy. Like, cause then I just kept thinking, like, I don't want to be codependent. I don't want to be codependent. I don't want to be codependent, you know? But like my therapist at the time was like, why don't we stop putting labels on things and why don't we think about like how do things actually feel and is it like productive and conducive and like how is the relationship, you know? And I was like, well, yeah, we really enjoy each other's time and like we have so much fun and he's super supportive and whatever. And she's just like, well, I don't really hear a problem there, you know? And I think sometimes we let societal we were talking about this earlier, right? Like there's the noise. We let the noise get in the way. And like since then, I have been able to just focus on kind of going back to feelings, like how does the relationship feel? And like we were just talking about this the other day, and it's just like it's not my fault if like you're my favorite person and I just like hanging out with you because you're cool, And it's just like I think it's really nice to have a partnership to where like I've known people who like can't wait to get away from their partners or can't wait to like go on their trip with their boys or can't wait to, and it's like that sucks. And it's not like judgment or anything. It's just like I feel super blessed to be in a partnership where we actually enjoy each other's time to where the like we're like literally missing each other and we like are with each other all the time, type of thing. Uh-huh.
Yeah, totally. I think it's so nice to have your partner as just a best friend. That's like you want them to be around. You want to hang out around them. And even though you already are around each other all the time, you want to be around each other more. And I think I want to ask you about something, and maybe this will be our little bit of closing topic, but I want to ask you, what are some of your favorite ways to hang out together? Because I feel like I think something that's so precious is couples that create together,
Mm,
because I feel a lot of time we're consuming together, and the creation process usually comes when it's creating a baby or taking care of a baby or taking care of a pet together.
mm,
But do you guys create anything together? And also, what are some of your favorite things to do to hang out together?
mm. Like we create memories. Yeah.
That's a good one, actually. Creating memories is creating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we like actually creating right now, I guess we are like he has officially allowed me to be like onboarded to help him with his business processes and systems and stuff like that. Which has been really nice because I've been trying for a while and he just wasn't he'd like be open to it but not really open to it. And like we went to this whole business mastery thing and he saw my magic and was just finally like, okay, come help. So we're creating better systems and processes in his business at the moment. And yeah, I think creating memories is just a big one. Like we love being in nature, we love traveling, we love just like being goofy with one another. We love creating meals. I guess that's the thing. Like he is a great sous chef in the kitchen, so he often will either be helping with meals or like if I'm too busy, he'll help with creating a meal. Um, we we do consume, however, we are pretty intentional about when we do consume, trying to allow it to be something that is like going to help us. So like lately we have been watching this series on like the origin of money and where money is today and like what we can think about it for the future, which has been really interesting. We just went to like business mastery with Tony Robbins and date with destiny with Tony Robbins, and so those are both like experiences and memories and like tools that we can use, and it's really nice to have. I think for us it's been really impactful because I've been in the self growth world for a few years, and so, like, I have language around certain things that maybe when I'm communicating, he doesn't exactly get it because he hasn't been to the same workshop as me or been in the same experience or read the book. But going to workshops together has been really helpful because it's like, okay, we learned this thing, and now we have common language to use around this thing, and so now it can help us even more. Um, so yeah, that's some of it. We also like going to the gym together, although we haven't been as much now because he's going in the morning and I like to sleep in. So
And there is nothing wrong with that. Isn't it proven that women need more sleep than men? Science says it.
love a good 9 hours in bed so I can make sure I have 8 hours of sleep.
Yes. 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 I love that. Thank you for standing for that. I agree with that. I think it's so important. I am totally not a nap girl, so I feel like I need to get a proper full 9 hours of sleep so that I can function at my fullest the whole day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like that midday sleepy feeling is not fun.
Mm-mm. Yeah. What about you? What about you and Navs? Are y'all creating anything?
So that's often my question to people on this, like couples. What do they create together? Because I want to find more ways to create together. We definitely create a lot of memories together, and um, I think creating continuously creating a clean home. I feel like that's creating,
Yeah.
right? Just like having to like we create meals together, but I think it's more me, but I think it's a lot of a partnership. Like whenever he'll wash, or
Mhm.
whenever
Mhm.
whenever I don't know, I make the bed, he'll make the coffee kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
so I don't think we're creating a lot of physical things, which is what I'm actually looking for and what I want to do. We used to sometimes paint together. We used to work out a lot together. But now, oh, now we're actually creating big scale. I told you, we're working on remodeling my childhood home
I was
to
thinking that when I asked, but yeah.
I forgot that we were even doing that, but that's like the biggest creation to date, that we're remodeling my childhood home for us to move in there. Um,
That's
so I
big.
guess we are creating something together, pretty big. But I do want to create more together. I think a lot of time we end up watching something, or we'll end up sitting on the couch and just doing nothing, which ends up being creating conversation,
Mhm.
because then something random will come up. But yeah, that's us. I think thank you for sharing also how you guys connected, so beautiful. And it was so beautiful to witness in real life. And I can't wait to do another double date. And I mean, Valentine's Day is coming up next week. So I thought it would just be nice to give some flowers to our men for being men that we can count on, and just being men
Yeah.
that show us that great men exist in the world. And I love what you said about cutting out the noise, because I think when we're in a story, it can become easy to be like, oh no, this is not everything I wanted, or oh no, this is not perfect, or oh no, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
then when we pull back and like shut everything off, like you said, it's like, but it's fun. Like, what's wrong with I love it. They're like, I love him. He's so fun. We have fun together. We create things together. We're able to sleep in the same bed and wake up and still want to spend time with each other. Like, that's a gift.
Yeah.
So flowers to our men. Thank you
Yes,
for
definitely.
being here. And I'm also so happy that Nate gave you your flowers. I love that post so much with what you were talking about Tony Robbins.
Yeah. One thing, if you guys want, this is just an idea, something that we started doing this year. We bought this little jar, and then we
Mm,
have like strips of paper. And every week we're putting something, either like a core memory or like something we're grateful for, or like just something from that week. And we're like
yeah.
putting in the jar. So then, like at the end of the year, we can like go through. And we actually went through them the end of January. He's like, "Ooh, we should do this more often because it's fun to look back." And I was like, "Okay, we can." But yeah, that's kind of like one way we're creating too. It's like
I
storing, can you
love
forget about the
that.
little things, you know?
Yeah, I love
Mhm.
that. And that feeling at the end, like reading it from the whole year, it's like, wow. Because then you realize that, okay, it may have been a difficult year, but also there was just so much magic in the year as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, Jelly, last two questions for you. My almost last question for you is what makes you a artist? And my question after that is where can people find you? How can they work with you? And anything you want to share with the world?
Yeah. Okay, what makes me a hardest? Yeah, I'm just gonna say I was like, I'm not gonna say that, but that just keeps coming through. Um, I think what makes me hardest is it sounds so corny, but like my heart and like caring and like I don't I just recently identified as an artist because I used to think art was like painting and poetry and stuff like that, you know, and I just recently like last week was like, bro, you fucking make art with your cooking. Like what? You know? And yeah, so I think I guess cooking makes me an artist, but more importantly, like I just care about the things that I'm interested in and like the people that I love and the things that I'm doing. And I think I tend to probably, not probably, at times I can put more into things than I need to. But it's just because I care and I want things to be good and great and look nice or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
I love it. And it's not corny at all. Definitely, your heart makes you a artist. And I am grateful to witness your heart. And just, I'm so
Mm,
happy that I get to be your friend. How can people follow your journey? And how can they work with you if they want to work with you?
yeah. They can follow my journey more closely on Instagram, simply.gel, Gel. You can also find me on TikTok. Those are like the two main places that I'm at currently. I don't have a website up, but if you follow me on Instagram and you are interested in working with me, you can DM me and we can get a connection call set up and work through whatever options there are.
Well, perfect. I'll link those all in the description as well. But for now, thank you, Jelly, for coming on the podcast. It has been so nice to just have this full conversation with you and talk about different things and talk
Mm,
about little us and teenage us. And I feel like little and teenage us would be so glad that we're friends too. So I'm just so
yeah.
grateful. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful as well. Thank you so much. I loved this conversation, and I am also so, so grateful to be your friend and to have crossed paths with you.